please come around to this side. We want to balance things out a little bit. It might be good just to hear a little bit about who's in the room, what brings you here. You think you'd be able to just share quickly first?
Sure. Hi everyone, good morning. My name is Soumya. I'm based in Delhi. I work with ASSER Social Impact Advisors. We are a consultancy which works largely on climate change. I'm a part of the Gender and Climate Change team at ASSER. I'm a researcher by training, but now I do a mix of programs and research and here to learn and contribute.
Please come fill out on this side. Yeah.
Yeah, so I am Advocate Sora. I'm working as a legal researcher in land conflict watch that is based in Delhi and working all over India on the land conflict, especially
Land conflict.
on commons.
Excellent.
So I'm here to learn more and let's have a good discussion.
Hi, I'm Mandeep. I work out of Jaipur with an organization called Center for Energy, Environment and People. We look at the issues intersection of energy and land, especially in the western Rajasthan where the solar deployment is happening. Here to provide understanding of the common.
We haven't officially begun as those were entering. We want to gather around the both sides of the table here to have an intimate discussion. Just giving people a chance to say hello and what you work on. You want to share as well from this side of the table a little bit, please.
Hi, my name is Anupam. I teach at the Institute of Technology in the Department of Legal Arts, and we've been working towards joint program collaborations with the FES office in Raleigh.
I got missed, I guess.
Not missed, it's coming around. We're popping around.
I'm Jagrut Dabra. I work for Indian Institute of Management right and I am a professor in marketing, so to that extent I'm kind of an outsider to this whole convention. It's my kind of a first exposure to commons and a convention like this. But I do have some experience in working with mining prospects. I am a consultant to CPMFP for the last 2 years, where we are helping them brand certain products, helping them market and brand certain products like Moa Energy Bar, honey.
Thanks. At the end of the table here, please, yes.
I'm Rajeshwari Raina. I teach now at Shivnagara University research. Before that, I was for about 24 years. I worked with the CSIR, the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, working on science, technology, and development studies. The major area of science and development concerns that I've looked at is agriculture, land, water, biodiversity, soils. So it's the content of knowledge, how it's shaped, whose knowledge counts, those kinds of things.
Excellent.
I also coordinate the rainfed livestock network. My research interests are mostly in the agriculture and livestock sector along with climate change. So my interest in being here is I have a large part of my career was in diagnostic, but I moved into research. So I feel research needs to be, maybe bridge the gap between research and diagnostic.
That's the topic of the day, yes, indeed. Please.
Hi, I'm Aditi and I'm an assistant professor at Data Institute of Social Sciences. And I largely work on issues of human dimensions of conservation. And currently I'm working on looking at cultural practices and landscape conservation in advanced countries.
Excellent. Those who are coming in, please come around to fill in on this side as well so that we're not imbalanced in the room. This is not a panel session. This is not a presentation. This is really just going to be a dialogue. Yeah? And for those who are just arriving, we were sharing a few of the names and research areas and areas of expertise in the room, but we're not going to fill that out altogether. I just wanted to give myself and others a flavor. My name is Blake Ratner. I founded and lead an organization called CORE. It's on the screen, Collaborating for Resilience, it means. And we do three things, basically. One is support the practice of multi-stakeholder dialogue to build inclusive governance. The second is to create exchange across groups and countries on this kind of challenge and the practice of how to do it well. And the third thing, the one that is most pertinent to the topic today, is we try to distill evidence around what it takes to improve environmental governance and help connect that to policy, to investment strategies, to philanthropy and others. So the topic of today, as it says here, is emerging areas for research and learning on the commons, but in particular, how to make that connection between research and practice, between evidence and action. And so that's what we're going to create a little bit of dialogue space around this morning. And to do that, I'm joined by my colleague Pratiti, if you could introduce yourself as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pratiti. I work with FES, and my role in FES is mainly around action research initiatives, and I'm based in Gujarat.
Thanks a lot, Pratiti. And so we have colleagues here from FES and CORE as well, but obviously we have a growing set of folks to share your expertise on this topic. And so the way we want to do this is first, let's see if it works. We're trying to introduce a little bit of innovation. If we could show the slide with the first question. This is the Mentimeter platform or technology. It's on the small screen as well as the big one. If you can pick up and scan the QR code, it will take you to a website to answer this question. And then everyone's answers will start to populate on the screen. If we have connectivity, if things are working as planned.
It needs internet?
Or you can, just on your phone is easiest. The phone signal will work as well. If you try it on the computer, you'll probably be more challenged. Karen, come around this side. So we're not looking for essays, just 4 or 5 words, 3 words that say, what do you think are the main areas emerging for research and learning on the commons?
It's not giving a space to type anything. It's just a thumbs up on the screen.
Okay. Well, all right. If it's just a thumbs up, that means it's not quite set up to handle it. We've heard a few of the areas, and let's just hear a few more verbally, and then we might be set up for the next one. So please have a seat. So we've heard around forest products, around agriculture, around land rights. What are other topics that are in the room? Please come around this side for those who are coming. That you feel perhaps that you've learned or heard about more over the past couple of days that you feel are particularly important to advance additional research and learning around, please.
I think one of the areas probably needs a bit more focus is in terms of looking at indigenous knowledge systems, how to manage
Other thoughts? Yes.
So because we work on gender and climate change, we have focused a lot on learning about the gender dimensions of commons, how women are more dependent on commons, and also how their leadership is more critical to conserving commons, especially in the context of climate change.
Excellent. Other thoughts about emerging priorities, please?
I also come from a cultural studies background, so our conversations with FES will be suggesting that it would be useful to think about how the cultural practices of various communities on the ground relate to the commons, and if they can be researched from not just documenting, but kind of reinforcing the importance of the commons via cultural practices.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just completed my PhD research. So my topic
Can you
was
speak up a little more? We have no speakers
so
in the
my
room.
research topic was on governing commands in Manipur, it's in Northeast. So evidence from my own Ananagar tribe. So like from the readings of commands, what I will generally come across is it's more of an institutional framework where Ostrom is talking about. But I think there's a research gap regarding what people also mentioned about the culture thing and also indigenous perspective, where we can blend somehow the Ostrom framework and the indigenous perspective for lens. So
Thanks.
new things.
Great. We're not getting into the how yet. I think this has been changed. If others still want to try again, it should have been changed now to be able to allow answers. Ah, yeah, there's one already. Please.
Emerging areas, and it's been emerging for some time as concerns about private property-based economics and commons as a common aim, sharing. That's been a big stumbling block because our entire policy arena, our entire academia, production systems are tuned to a particular formalism. There is no understanding, not even acknowledgement of the substantialism that underpins commons. That is a research area that we need to
The substantialism, you said.
substantive economics, yeah,
Uh-huh.
a little more substantive economics, and of course questions of what kind of common what kind of economics does accommodate.
Thanks. Karan, please come around to this side. Other things that you haven't heard yet that are additional.
I think something that's come up in the last couple of days is heterogeneity within the commons. So there is this overstanding, there's this broad-based assumption that the commons or a community is homogeneous and there's no power imbalances within it. But I think heterogeneity within the commons itself is something that's important to address.
Please.
Yeah, Dr. G.K. Jala. I'm an ethnobotanist from Rajasthan. So, the emerging area of research and learning is maybe the ethnobotany of commons. You can make it. Ethnobotany of commons. Ethnobotany of commons.
Ethnobotany.
Yes. People's traditional knowledge regarding the mainly flora, but one or two it can be included in that.
Okay.
Completely.
Thank you. You had your hand up?
So, I would like to start from a quote by Dr. Ambedkar. He says that ignoring castes in India is like we are ignoring a live electric wire. When we look at the commons are used by the marginalized communities. But when we talk about research, the Dalits or the tribals have just become the data. But the thing is about that when we go for the implementation, they didn't get any substantial results in the favor of them. So my main issue is that caste and commons must be a research area.
Okay. And it sounds like a challenge to bridge as well as a topic for research. I saw some agreement in the back of the room there. That seemed to resonate with you. Did you want to add?
Going beyond that, rather than just making the marginalized as data making calls, you can also think beyond as including them in research.
For sure.
Giving more space for the marginalized.
Within research. Excellent. Yes.
Appropriate technology for managing the common resources.
Technology for managing? You mean institutions or other kind of technology?
No, in terms of either machines or new inventions to manage the common resources.
New inventions. You're thinking about technology like data and...
Not only data, even physically, inventing new machinery for NDFPs or
like NDFP collection and things. Okay.
processing of NDFPs.
Processing. Oh, okay. Now I get a better sense. Thank you. Yes.
We all know about the separate entities and the work that is
Please.
in agriculture, livestock and commons. So maybe one of the emerging areas of research can be finding an interconnection between these commons, livestock and agriculture as a whole. So that can be one of the areas.
Thank you. Please come forward. There's lots of seats still on this side and around. Yes, please.
I'm Dinesh Marothia. I'm the president of the Indian Society of
If you can speak up a bit. for the across the room.
Two emerging issues which are still unanswered. As we all know that, as I also mentioned in my plenary session, that all the commons, they are multi-use and multifunctional and engage the heterogeneous stakeholders. Now the question here is, the moment you shift the tenurial arrangements or the property rights regime, how it will affect to the traditional food system, whether it is the tubers, whether it is, which are essential component in the food baskets of the tribals and the underprivileged people. This is number one. The second is, do we have a very strong or the workable framework to understand the whole dynamics of the commons when we relate to the sustainable development goals? And do we need additional, as I mentioned in my opening remark on the first day, do we really have the enough understanding to redefine the targets within with respect to a particular sustainable development goal, and particularly the session which you have headed yesterday on the partnership collaboration.
Yes, on multi-actor platforms.
Multi-layer actors. Can we really reflect that in a workable, framework to have some empirical evidence or at least some quantitative indicators to justify that, look here is the framework, and from there you can take some messages to improve further or to add the value to the understanding.
Right.
So these are the two things.
Excellent. Thank you. We just, for those who are just arriving, you see the question on the board about main areas emerging for research on the commons. And we're not going to get everyone's views, but this is still open, I believe, right? It's still open. If you just scan the QR code with your phone, you can add your additional thoughts as well about other topics that you feel are important. Please come around, Bishop. So,
ये थोड़ा कुछ हिंदी में ट्रांसलेट कोई कर पाएंगे?
Get it translated.
Yes, please. Oh, you mean these topics?
He wants to get it translated in Hindi.
Okay. Let me suggest, if you can help just mention, if there are a few who want to get Hindi, if you could gather around this corner, yeah? If there's anybody who can volunteer, please to just help out, that would be great. Because if we do live translation, there won't be time to continue. Yeah? If you can just sit together a little bit. If there are others, please join. Okay.
I will do for you, okay? I will translate it.
No, it will only work if you sit together.
Yeah. I will brief them once we will sit together.
Well, if you want to sit, if you want to sit together,
Okay.
please join. She's there.
Okay.
All right. So we've got a number of topics that are coming up. Let me just mention a few that are on the screen. If we can scroll back, we've heard about the indigenous and local practices, the substantive economics, encyclopedia of good practices and experiences, codification of rules and governance, women in the commons, big data and light data that can be represented in different ways, and issues around consumer behavior as well. So for those who arrived as we had already begun discussing earlier in the discussion around this question of key research areas emerging, there was mention around minor forest products, around technology for the commons, around food systems, connections with between livestock and cropping, issues of caste. Indigenous knowledge came up several times, questions of heterogeneity and connections across different actors within the commons, issues of property rights, ethnobotany. So quite a variety, right, of issues and concerns. Now, I want to move on to look at a second question, which is one we're not going to put on the Mentimeter, but just begin discussing, which is, all right, given the needs, the sorts of needs that we have just begun to identify, what are the strategies or pathways to make the connect between research and learning and action to restore the commons, to advance the livelihoods of those who depend upon the ecological commons? For example, there are strategies that have to do with influencing policy directly, in an advisory role with government. There's work with civil society to be able to strengthen the hand of advocacy organizations. There is work with the media, for example, to help to broaden public awareness. There's work through alternative media and civil and community organizations to help build local understanding, cultural events and so forth. There's work with the private sector to try to develop, platforms and other technologies to connect different actors around the commons, just to name a few, right? So the question is, what do you feel are the most effective ways to bridge this gap between research and practice or action? Yeah, we've heard in the room we have a number who come from academia, who come from research backgrounds. We certainly have in the room those as well who are focused more on direct action and support to communities and addressing ecological challenges. So we're going to keep these thoughts brief as well because we want to include many, but please.
Before you talk about restoration, I think one topic is very important: the extent and severity of degradation and its relationship with the drivers of degradation. Only then I think we can take up it as a policy issue.
Loud. It is not audible here.
I'm saying that before we discuss about how to do it, we must understand another research topic which is very important: the extent and severity of degradation and its relationship with the drivers of degradation. Only then you can take up to a policy maker or you can prepare a plan for action.
So in a sense, building a sense of awareness and urgency around the challenge,
which is data-based, evidence-based.
Evidence-based, that's already part of the issue, okay? But that in itself is an element of strategy, right? To build awareness about the challenge itself. Please.
I think we need to move ahead also from just looking at strategies, because I think one of the things which is missing is the feedback about what is that, how the strategy is rolling out. Like in the session on plastic commons, we talked so much about, it was a very interesting scenario that the same model in 3 different states was rolling out in 3 different scenarios, and it was working in some places and wasn't working in the others. So, I think we need to move ahead from strategy also and look at if there's a mechanism for some sort of a feedback loop coming back for continuous process improvement. So
when you say feedback, who are the actors you're talking about?
If the actors can be many, but then where do we kind of design a kind of a system where we can get the feedback loop back? That's what is missing, I think. The actors need to know what's happening once a strategy is rolled out. I feel we are stuck at still bringing people together and talking about a strategy, but then what happens to the strategy over a period of time is not being looked at.
Okay, so when you say strategy, you're still thinking of strategy to make that bridge between research and action, but you need to learn about that as well. Understood. Please come on in. There's a little bit of room for more. Yes.
Yeah. My name is Jaya, and I work with Central University of Rajasthan, the Department of Society Technology Interface. So we work on digital technology and society research on that. So I've been part of the tech groups that were happening, workshops and other sessions. And my personal realization was that when we talk about technology, especially digital technology, it becomes pretty much urban, I mean, the meaning making. When we're talking about commons, then if we really have to apply technology, digital technology, spatial technology, GIS, mapping, this and that. So the realization is technology has to reach to the common people, those who are closer to commons, especially village commons. So according to me, this can be a research area for those who are interested. Meaningful digital for commons. It's not digital commons, digital for commons. And then if we can look at this, and then how can the arrangement of working on digital for commons, which means that those who develop technology, they have to be part of, as an actor, part of the team. Those who use it, like those who preserve commons or curate commons or think about commons, they have to be part of it. So in the workshops, I realized that those people were missing, because we couldn't really talk about digital for commons. What do they understand about that? So I think that's where knowledge can be generated, and then we can work on research.
I'm Mohan HH from Gadchiroli, Maharashtra, and also working with FES. There is research and learning needed in agri-land commerce. We have one panel in this program, but this is newly introduced area. So research and learning is necessary on the agri-land commerce. Another important area is missing is the commons in urban area. The land is also in the urban area, so we must make research and learning from the land in urban area as a commons.
All right, we're going to keep on the...
One thing I add to, and while doing this, we must give priority to women's involvement in this research and learning.
Thanks. We're going to keep on the line of strategies to make this connection. Please.
So I think I'll connect both the questions together. Whose commons it is anyways is the basic question. No? We are still very much confused about whose commons we are talking about. Is it government's commons, or is it the community's commons, or is it somewhere in between, or there might be various private commons also nowadays. So if there is no sense of ownership, then management of any of the commons becomes one of the most difficult tasks when we are talking about strategies. So when we are talking about research questions, what perspective are we coming from? Philosophical perspective or economic perspective or any of the perspectives? Because until and unless we are very much clear about whose commons it is anyways, because we are talking about legislations, we are talking about policies, we are talking about field level, grassroots level work on who is supposed to work on those commons. Because policy making somebody else is doing. Field implementation somebody else is doing, they have no connection whatsoever. So if we are even suggesting what should we do for management of commons or to take advantage of emerging opportunities, so are we really clear about, because somebody talked about evidence based. Evidence is all in front of us who is working directly with the commons. So if a person sees some certain sort of degradation, if a person sees some sort of change in the commons, the person is feeling it firsthand. It's primary evidence that is there in front of that person. But person who is sitting far away from that commons, he sees it as secondary data and macro management of just data with no connection with the commons. So I think I would request this house to at least address this question of whose commons it is anyways. I think this question has been there throughout since ages. I'm not asking a new question, like I think we need to connect the dots. That's the only submission I have.
All right, thanks.
I'll translate if you give me a minute.
We're not going to do it openly, but please,
yeah,
in a small group. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I have this question about. Sorry. Can you hear me?
If you can stand up, please.
Yeah, I can stand up. Yeah, see, managing commons is also a kind of a challenge in a unit like village,
where funding is also required, because sometimes the commons have gone so they've degraded in such a way that we at least need some fencing, some regeneration. All that also needs to happen. And when we look at when we work in the village, we go for looking for funds. There's never such thing available, and the panchayats and everybody will say, where is the fund, where do we get it, we don't have any allocation. So we don't understand, the communities don't understand where to and whom to approach, which department to go to manage their commons. If they need some kind of a resources, it could be money, it could be technical advice, it could be anything. That is not available because that is not so much talk about in the village. So how do we look at that component of the work? Thank you. हिंदी में करने की जरूरत नहीं है.
So about accessing information.
Accessing information about which department, what resources, where do you get it, how do you get it, what are the processes, everything of that sort is missing.
Okay, now let me try to pull the conversation back to a little bit of a closer focus, all right? Because we can discuss about what is needed to support better management of the commons and livelihoods dependent on the commons. That's this whole conference, right? This conversation we're going to pull it in a little bit more closely, specifically around research and evidence, okay? What are the ways that research and evidence can have more influence in practice, whether that's policy or whether it's local management or whether it's the types of interactions that need to happen between different stakeholders and groups, yeah? So I want to hear a few more comments about this, and then Pratiti, I'm going to ask you to draw out what you're hearing and what's missing from a research perspective, yeah?
I just wanted to also share about the experience that we have done on ground and sort of draw a few exact learnings from there. So we think that research is beyond just producing a report at the end, and we have to look at the entire research process, which has to be community driven and inclusive. So what we did in Odisha was to work with 10 tribal indigenous women and build their leaderships on carrying out the commons mapping for their respective villages. So they actually they were trained on how to do it, but they actually drew up maps of the commons in their villages and included commons not just like forests or water, but also the cultural commons, the knowledge commons and everything. And they held community meetings, they did field surveys, and they drew up maps of the catastrophic maps of the commons in their villages. They also accessed the land records which were available with the government to map what has been the change in the commons in their villages. And now the learnings that they have got from this entire exercise, and we can talk later about it in a one-to-one conversation, they are actually using it to inform the decision making at the village level. So they are informing the village planning with respect to conservation of commons in their respective villages. They're also working with the communities to bring back some of the traditional practices of natural resource conservation which were there. In addition, they are now holding dialogues with the block and the district administration to bring to their attention the degradation of the commons which has taken place over the year with concrete facts and visualized facts in between. And they're also working with the government to see how different schemes like say Narega can be leveraged for the conservation of commons in the respective villages. Additional thing that we're doing with the commons, which is also linked to the digital commons that she was talking about, is that we're building a dashboard of this commons mapping with them, which will be accessible to everyone to see how the commons change over time and what are the implications of this for the communities at large, and to also bring that to the discourse for everyone else who's not directly involved at the ground level. So our learning from this is that it worked because women were the co-creators and a very active part of this research process. The research was not oriented towards a research output, but rather towards achieving an action. It was through a consultative process with active community engagement at all stages of the research, and we invested in building the leadership of the communities who had a stake in the management of commons and gains from that. So just wanted to share that.
Okay, excellent. So let me hold on to this a little bit, because what you've just described is like a nice arc, right? Yeah. From the approach to the research with local communities directly and the sorts of outcomes that it's able to lead to. Is there anybody else who can share a similar kind of arc of what has worked in practice to bring research to influence action? Yeah.
So, one way by which you can actually deliver more value through research is by collaborating with academy. So very small things like, I heard things about heterogeneity being spoken, right? There are robust techniques that we have used to capture heterogeneity. Right? And I'll give you a small example of what we did for Chhattisgarh Minor Forest Produce. So they wanted to brand and market a product called Energy Bar, Mahua Energy Bar, right? And they wanted to learn how to position that product. Should they do it on organic? It's an organic product plank, or should they invoke people's feeling of altruism and it's a produce from the forest and tribal women produce it, etc. Now yesterday I heard a lot of talk about organic. But when we did this study, we found that willingness to pay for organic products in India was actually much lower than willingness to pay for if you invoke people's guilt and you invoke people's altruistic motives, right? So why I'm giving you this example is that this is a very small missing piece which can go a long way in establishing a good brand.
Before we get in, we don't want to get into the detail of the actual research, but if I understand right, that part of what you're describing is that you're drawing on the academic skills and disciplines, but that you're also working directly with a client that wants to make use of that.
To give some actionable points on which things can move ahead.
Okay, so in a sense, that's a different model, right? We had the kind of community-based collaborative research, and here's one that's kind of almost. Would it be okay to say like direct consulting with community organizations to help advise them? That's different. Okay. Ma'am, you had your hand up with another model. If you could make sure to project to those in the back of the room.
I think your question was about how do we time with what this person says.
Well, not just that, also different approaches.
So bringing in this, currently what is, let's say, what goes in the name of research in academic organizations is a kind of, catching up with the trend. Yeah, you just follow the trend. Whatever is trendy now, you will all jump into that. That's unfortunately the way in which we do research. This is rich. What we just heard was about the richness of knowledge in, again, depth and richness of knowledge in the field.
Right.
And therefore, the attempt that was made, I didn't get your name here, Soumya.
Yeah.
So you looked at the processes, that is, the ways of learning, and that investment is, well, in academic organizations actively discouraged. Civil society organizations at least have the scope to do that. I think we need to bring in some of that, and that is one of the most important components of building a research agenda that is, one, based on the evidence, not just evidence of a practice or a set of practices,
right,
but on the knowledge that is the institution's rules and norms. Like in the Bunny Grasslands, you have a biocultural protocol that is written up. So where do they come from, the biocultural protocols? What is the history of that? What are the historical and institutional drivers of these? Those are really deep disciplinary and interdisciplinary research that needs to happen, and we don't seem to be investing in that at all. So practice, starting from an understanding of practice, not just as a set of practices, but involving several processes of learning and evolution. That's the basis of good research. We don't seem to be doing that. Sorry, it's frustrated academic.
You have a word of agreement on this side. Let me just mention before we keep the conversation moving. You've got another question on the screen here, which you're welcome to, for those who.
You also wanted to add something.
Okay, just a minute. To respond to on the Mentimeter, you can scan it with your phone and respond. We're going to, in a few minutes, turn the discussion towards this question about how we can actually collaborate to address these priorities. But please go ahead and start to add your thoughts to that. We're going to hear from you first, and then we'll come. Please.
Right. I've been, I came here today. This was my first day at the conference, but I've been talking to people and I've been kind of gathering information.
Right.
And I feel that there's a fear that a lot of the work and a lot of the thought that's being put in is very village-centric. It's kind of very sedentary-centric. And we need to think about the spaces that are falling through the gaps. For example, we have millions of pastoralists in this country who migrate. But, we are not paying any thought to, say, the migratory routes of pastoralists that should be commons. Yeah, or, grazing lands or pastures that are not part of village commons, that are not forest areas.
And
I think those are the most threatened kind of spaces with regards to the commons. So I
put the
work
question
with
back on strategy.
Yeah.
What do you think is actually working or needs to happen to achieve that, to have more awareness of these, the migratory commons?
Well, for the past 25 years, I've been closely working with the Gujjar Bakarwals of Jammu and Kashmir. And my PhD fieldwork was in this area called Vadvan, which is perhaps amongst the most remote areas in the country. And what is disappointing to notice is that in spite of trying to lobby and, talk to a lot of people and garner, whatever support, what is happening is that the villages, the sedentary villages get something. They get developed, they get heard. But the people in very remote areas and highland pastures, they continue to be as they are. So I don't have a magic pill, I'm sorry. But I'm putting a very important research agenda on the table. And we need to think about this. So, one could think of possible solutions, but this is difficult. Also because, for example, in mountain areas, if the Bakarwals create a route, then gradually engineers come and make a road on it and claim that, it's a... So, there's no recognition of this kind of invisibility in a certain sense. And I'm sorry, I don't have a perfect solution, but I'm putting the problem on the table, and asking these questions is very much part of the agenda for research.
Okay, thank you very much, because this is, I appreciate the honesty there, but this is also an opportunity, right? If they say, okay, if others react to that, it can be an opportunity to collaborate, right? And so we want to make sure to catch that. I'm gonna give the floor to the gentleman, please.
मैं तो हिंदी बोलूँगा, इंग्लिश में समझना है.
Okay.
तो मेरा नाम देवाजी तोपा, महाराष्ट्र से आए हैं. तो ग्राम सभा को एक सेपार जो क्षेत्र मिले हैं पूरे क्षेत्र में, उसका सर्वे होना ज़रूरी है. कितना क्षेत्र हैं, कितना पेड़ हैं, कौन से पेड़ हैं, कैसे कैसे लोग इसका ट्राइबल लोग इस्तेमाल करते हैं, कितना खाते हैं, कितना वो बिकते हैं, कितना ये करते हैं, क्या वो कहाँ बेचते हैं, उसको रेट कितना मिलता है, वहाँ शोषण भी होता है. तो ये भी इसका रिसोर्स होना ज़रूरी है. और कौन सा कम्युनिटी है वहाँ, तो वो कम्युनिटी का भी है. जहाँ कम्युनिटी है कि बाहर से लोग आके उसी क्षेत्र में बहुत ही उनका मूल निवासी का, आदिवासी का संस्कृति का भी नष्ट हो रहा है, तो जंगल भी नष्ट हो रहा है, उसका भी सर्वे होना ज़रूरी है. ये मेरा सुझाव है.
I'll translate. So what he's saying is that people are using forests for various purposes, using some things to eat, some things to drink, some for medicines, and various purposes. So that should also become part of the research, documentation of that, and how they are selling their forest produce in the market, whether they are getting exploited, whether they are benefiting out of it. That should become part of the research. And again, there are a lot of indigenous communities all across, and there are a lot of outsiders who have come in. Impact of such outsiders coming in the village and then affecting the common property resources, that should become part of the research. So I think that has gone out of the agenda. That's what it is.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Right, now I see we've got a number of hands coming up. Pratiti, are there others you want to call on or questions you want to bring in at this point to keep?
So I'm new to this whole discussion, and from a research perspective, I was just thinking, we have been talking a lot about inclusion,
is there any research to support what has been the impact of inclusion in terms of intersectionality, in terms of, we are not talking of community as one homogeneous entity. There are women, there are men, and there are tribes of women. So, I, as an outsider just getting into this understanding, would like to know what has been the impact. I think another area of research that I would be very interested in is a longitudinal study over a period of time, what has been the intervention and how it has brought about changes in the household decision-making processes as well, because we are working with women by and large, so we are understanding that. And the third would be, I think, a deep research on what has been the impact so far: urbanization, capitalism, individualism. So there are a lot of other factors which, since the last 2 days, we've been hearing. So a more research-based, because right now it's very anecdotal what we're talking of in the last 2 days. It's very anecdotal. Can we have very systematic research on this has been the impact? So these are the things that I think would be very useful. A sound policy.
You're thinking with a policy orientation in particular.
I think so. Policy orientation also, and for people like us who are just getting into it in terms of implementation, what has worked, what hasn't worked. Less from anecdotal point of view and more from a research point of view.
Please.
Sir, I'm Yumita Mundani. I'm from Central University of Rajasthan. Specifically, I'm from the economics department. So I just want to see the discussion more in the economic perspective, because I've seen very few researchers which is leading common towards the economic area and the economic perspective. So what yesterday discussion I just attended about is NFTP, the farmers produce, and when we talk about the market linkages that are really, the very pertinent area where we can do the further researches on that how this particular group, the farmer produce, can have, these linkages, especially with the international trade market, as they can be trained for this exports and also the packaging, labeling, and the standard certification which they require for their organic products. So in this area, definitely we can think forward new research area of the economic perspective.
Thanks. All right, what we can see is that the conversation is moving towards what can we do together, yeah? If we take your observation about the relative lack of kind of concrete evidence in this conference so far, one possibility is that the convening next time it happens could already present the results of some collaborative research that connects on some of these themes we've been hearing about today, right? So that's the question we want to turn to for our last half hour. And that's this: what can we collaborate on, just a minute, to fill the gaps and take advantage of these opportunities? And for those who are adding their thoughts on the Mentimeter here, please go ahead in parentheses as you add your thought and put your name, yeah? Because that will help us later and help those who are organizing this to track and help make those connections, okay? Because some of you know a lot of others here, but nobody knows everybody in the room, right? So we have to make sure we have a way to keep track of that. So please go ahead. There's only a little space on the screen. It will keep flowing, and it can capture 100 responses, so no worries. Go ahead and add your thoughts. So we're turning now, for the last half hour, to how do we collaborate to address the kinds of gaps we've been hearing about, right? We've been hearing about strategies in terms of working directly with communities to influence local actors, around leveraging economics, around using kind of marketing research, the idea of tech for the commons, the idea of research on knowledge around norms and institutions and how those affect outcomes. These are just a few of these. We also heard about the importance of kind of feedback loops to make sure that the research that is happening, the evidence that's being built, how well it's being used, there's a way to learn about that cycle as well. So these are a few of the things we've been hearing. We've got additional thoughts coming up on the screen about how what we can collaborate on to fill these gaps or address the opportunities that emerge, to apply good research and evidence to help advance what this whole convening has been about, the cause of robust and resilient commons. Okay, so on that theme, yeah? Other thoughts about if you have something practically, here's something I'd like to propose and bring others to work together on, or here's something I'm looking for collaborators to do. That's what we want to hear at this stage. Is it on that topic? Please stand up and introduce yourself and your idea for collaboration.
So my name is Anirudh and I work with Rainforest Alliance, and we work in Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, specifically across 10 landscapes, so around each around 10,000 acres, so 8 in Andhra Pradesh, 2 in Karnataka. So on the issue of collaboration, before I jump into that one point, there is a lot out over there by being put out by different agencies, government and some non-government, IUCN and others, which talks about commons and the data around commons. We need to look at, because I think this is, before we jump into any research, the basic desk research will tell us a lot, and it is already there because we are doing it, so we can tell you that there's a lot of information around that. Secondly, coming to the longitudinal issues and research, where for landscapes, there is a tool called Landscape, put together by Rainforest Alliance, UNDP, and everybody else together. It's a joint tool which has been put together. And we have just started longitudinal tool, so we do the baseline now, and 3 or 4 years we go back and look at it. There are 4 pillars of around that study. We've just launched that study in Karnataka with University of Bangalore, Agriculture Bangalore. So there is a lot of scope of collaborating and looking at things. So there is a whole Bhavna is also part of our research which she is doing with us in the policy arena. So there is a lot of these pieces of work which is there, which can be collaborated together with, and happy to get the collaboration on these issues. So but again, commons from the landscape perspective we are looking into it.
Excellent. So it's not only a source of information for others, it's also a tool
in there
to use in research.
Tool of how a whole landscape will move from point 1 to point 2 if you have done implementation XYZ. The changes, how do you capture it?
Okay.
It's completely an evaluation framework.
So the land scale framework. Other opportunities for collaboration. Those who haven't spoken yet, yes, please.
So I think, while there is a lot of, this is Kiran Shaiva from Microgroup. While there's a lot of great research that is happening, and of course there's a lot of participatory, so there's no problem with the information coming into research. But what about that research learning going back to those people? I mean, invariably you see this happening, and I think there's a really very key need to bridge conversations between academia, practitioners, and community members to make sure that that data goes back. Like I earlier wrote about big data and light data. So that I think is a huge collaboration need to take data and knowledge and learning back to the community.
Great. Other collaborative opportunities. Who's not spoken yet, please?
I am Ronak from Seva Mandir. We've been working on commons for about 40 years now. So one area which we feel is not less researched, and I think I'm taking the point what the madam spoke there for this, is how do we look at commons as a means for social change? It's largely being looked at the end where you develop a common and there will be economic benefits, but socio-political angle or anthropological angle. And so in our experience, lot of where a village have come together, it's a Mendalekha, and many of the villages, it's not easy for people to resolve conflicts around, but when community resolves conflicts and they come together, which is the result that you see as a commons, which is coming up. But what happens in the community through that process?
And is that ongoing research that others can join?
We would like to collaborate. We have 400 villages where if somebody is interested to come and partner with us, an academic, because we've been looking for partners who can most of the people are interested to research on economics part, but there is a socio-political angle of developing commons, and that research is largely missing in the entire academic area.
Okay.
And actually that's what we want today, where there are a lot of contestation. Can common build a strong community? And if that can be a research, if somebody is interested, we'll be very happy to partner with them.
Commons for social change and community strengthening. Excellent. Please.
Hello, my name is Mohit. I want to say something connecting to what Devaji was proposing. It's about researching the community forest or the forest commons. So, actually researching forest commons is very difficult because it is not allowed to. There are certain practices in the forest common which have been led by the bureaucracy in the name of scientific management. We can say it working plans or scientific forestry. And there is a possibility that community will be asked or forced to follow the practices while preparing their community forest resource management plans, because the recent guidelines say that. So how do we research the practices the practices of scientific forestry? Are they really scientific? And what if the communities are forced to follow the same practices? So there are examples. Oak felling is the example, or planting trees is the example.
Thank you. Other thoughts for collaboration? Please.
ये रिसर्च और अध्ययन के इसमें एक बड़ा हिस्सा छूट जाता है. कई टिपिकल कुछ एक इंस्टीट्यूट कर लेते हैं, कोई डिपार्टमेंट कर लेता है, लेकिन जो अभी FRA आया है और कई सदियों से लोग अपने आजीविका के लिए जंगल और नैसर्गिक संसाधनों पर निर्भर है. ये स्पष्ट होता है कि जहाँ इलाका है, जहाँ गरीबी है, वहाँ अभी भी टिका हुआ है. और हम सब लोग समझ में ले जाते हैं कि उनको अभी ज्ञान नहीं है, टेक्निकली ज्ञान नहीं, तो ये कैसे टिका है. तो जो अध्ययन होता है खासतौर पर इतने में जो FRA आया है, और FRA के बाद हमारे यहाँ खासतौर पे बांस की फीलिंग होती है. कटाई में उसको शब्द नहीं करूँगा कि उसको मैनेज किया जाता है जिससे. लेकिन एक जगह इतने सालों से हम ही लोग वो फॉरेस्ट की डिपार्टमेंट के मजदूर थे, हम ही ग्राम सभा है, उनको काटते थे. अब उसी तरह से हम अब काटे तो उनको ऐसा लग रहा है कि ग्राम सभा है या उस इलाके में ये गलत तरह से कटिंग हो रहा है. ऐसे फीलिंग में ऐसे इसमें कम्युनिटी, कोई इंस्टीट्यूट, डिपार्टमेंट, रिसर्च सब मिलके अध्ययन करेंगे तो ये अध्ययन में सभी की सहभागिता रहेगी और उससे थोड़ा सा सबका निकल के आ सकता है. ऐसा मुझे रिसर्च के बारे में एक सुझाव देने का मन में इच्छा था. शायद ये मुद्दा किसी और ने बोल दिया होगा, दोबारा अगर आपको सुनना पड़ा तो भी
What is trying to say is that agency of research, like there are like a lot of people in academia or within the civil society who have taken up the agency of research away from people. So, and we assume that the community doesn't know about it. And I think what he was saying is that the community knows about it. In the name of scientific research, certain thoughts have been imposed upon the community, and that has become the prominent thought. So what needs to be done is that let all stakeholders, he was giving example of bamboo management. So he was saying that the forest department had been doing bamboo felling for many years, and community also knows how to do it because they were the ones who are dependent on it. So let all stakeholders sit together and then redefine the research. Maybe research questions or research methodology or even the output and this kind of thing.
Right.
That's what he was saying.
Thanks. I think that speaks to a broader point as well, right? That it's not only about community involvement in local research activities, but also definition of priorities and objectives for what do we need to learn and who do we need to share that information with. Please. What's your thought for collaboration?
डॉक्टर सीताराम वर्मा, कृषि एवं पारिस्थितिक विकास संस्थान अलवर, राजस्थान से हूँ. जैसा अभी देवव्रत जी कह रहे थे, उन्होंने भी कहा था, ये बिल्कुल सही बात है कि हम लोग जो है साइंटिफिक रिसर्च के करके उनको जो है नॉलेज को उनके ऊपर डालते हैं, जबकि उनका ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज है दैट इज़ मोर इम्पोर्टेंट, वो सदियों से करते आ रहे हैं। तो हमको जो हमारी संस्था है, हमने अभी जैसलमेर में थार डेजर्ट के जो वो थे ओरेंज 100 ओरेंज, उसका डीप स्टडी की थी। 129 का एक सर्वे फॉर्म डेवलप किया था, उनके ओरेंज टू ओरेंज जाकर के उनका सर्वे किया, फील्ड में टीम गई, कम्युनिटी के साथ डिस्कशन किए और उनकी जितनी भी फाइंडिंग्स थी, चाहे वो बायोडाइवर्सिटी की थी, फौना फ्लोरा, उनकी कल्चरल प्रैक्टिसेस, वाटर रिसोर्सेज ओरेंज में क्या थे और वो क्या कैसे NTPS को कलेक्ट कर रहे थे, उनकी लाइवलीहुड किस तरह से उनसे डिपेंड थी और वो किस तरह से ओरेंज के साथ जुड़े हुए थे। और इससे पहले हमने अरावली हिल्स के जो 100 ओरेंज है उसके ऊपर भी एक एटलस पब्लिश की थी। तो मेरा कहने का मतलब है कि हमें उनके साथ काम करके और हम जो है उनके इस तरह से एक्सपोज ना करके उनके साथ नॉलेज शेयरिंग प्रोग्राम्स वर्कशॉप करते हैं। उनके उसी जैसलमेर में है जो इंटीरियर एरिया है, वहाँ जाकर वर्कशॉप करी, उनकी नॉलेज को हमें लेना है और उस नॉलेज को प्योरीफाई कर सकते हैं हम। अगर टोटल जो इस तरह की साइंटिफिक नॉलेज इनको बताएंगे तो वो केवल लैब तक ही सीमित रह जाती है। लैब का साइंटिस्ट कर सकता है, फील्ड का आदमी उस चीज़ को नहीं कर सकता। तो इस चीज़ पे मेरा यही है कि जो भी ओरेंज से कॉमन्स को बचाना है तो हमें पहले जो कर रहे हैं उनकी नॉलेज को अपने को सीखना पड़ेगा, उसके अंदर अपन सुधार कर सकते हैं, इसको इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं। पर बिल्कुल ट्रेडिशंस को बदल देंगे तो नहीं, उसका बिल्कुल ख़त्म हो जाएगा कि वो आदमी जिसको मैनेज कर रहा है उसको वो इतना टेक्निकली साउंड नहीं है। लैब में साइंटिस्ट होते हैं, आप हाइड्रोपोनिक कुछ भी कर सकते हैं, कुछ भी लगा सकते हैं, और वो चीज़ फील्ड में जाती है। वैसे भी कई आप बार देखा होगा, मैं एनिमल हस्बेंड्री से हूँ, कई बार हम एनिमल एक ट्रैक से लाकर या दूसरे ट्रैक पर ले जाते हैं, उसका सडनली मिल्क प्रोडक्शन जो फॉल हो जाता है, वो हर एनिमल हर स्पीसीज़ का एक नेटिव हैबिटेट होता है, वो वहीं ग्रो कर सकता है, वहीं इसकी सर्वाइवल रेट ज़्यादा होती है। तो जहाँ पे जो फौना फ्लोरा है, अगर हम कोई सी इंडिजिनस स्पीसीज जो वहाँ की है लोकल, उसको ही प्लांट करेंगे तो वहाँ पे जो है बढ़ेगी। अगर जैसे ये बबूल वगैरह आ गए, ये सब प्लांटेशन हुए, उसकी वजह से उसका बायोडाइवर्सिटी है वो सब जो बिगड़ती है। तो बेसिकली उनको रिसर्च करके उनके बेस ऊपर ही आगे हम बढ़ेंगे तो कॉमन्स को अच्छे से सर्वाइव कर पाएंगे। अदरवाइज हम अपना जो है ब्यूरोक्रेसी या साइंटिफिक नॉलेज को बहुत ज़्यादा वहाँ ले जाकर के चाहें कि सक्सेस हो जाए तो वो सक्सेस नहीं होगी। हमें उनसे ज़्यादा सीखना है और उसके अंदर इनपुट देना है, न कि हमें टोटल इनपुट हमारा देना है। थैंक यू।
So community has to be part of drawing the research questions and also maybe grounded, I mean adding to what he was saying, that maybe grounded theory based or focused researches can also be there.
Actually, common of livelihood of many peoples. I am saying many peoples. I don't know data. So, how many peoples? How much share of livelihood from commons? So this must be documented, maybe area-wise, like state-wise, and then we can make some research. Then how can we advocacy with this government and with the other international or national parties, so we can give proper fund, function and functionaries for conserving, managing and developing commons, because those people have livelihood from commons, they are poor and their voice is not heard, I think so. So they are losing their livelihood every day. Many people are coming from honor, like honor of some animals, honor of some traditional livelihood, and now they become laborer in the urban areas. So we are losing the livelihoods of many people day per day, but the community conservation management is not set up in there, and they are not function proper.
To me, this comment links to something we heard earlier, which was about just establishing the importance of the value of the commons and the threats against them. And to me, that has a kind of a policy connection here. If there's greater awareness of that value and threats, then perhaps there's more interest in adapting policy to support solutions for the commons as well. And I just want to see whether there are any who want to share about collaboration opportunities that have to do more with that, the angle of public awareness or the angle of policy pathways.
Excuse me.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Yes, please. Stand up.
Yeah. My introduction again, I'm Dr. GPS Jala from Seramandi. So, I think this collaborate with the community institutions for research and grassroots governance over commons. This is very needed at the ground level. Thank you.
Thank you. Others want to respond to this? Yes.
So the thing is, when we are talking about the opportunities, so we have to understand कि क्या जिनके लिए हम लोग बात कर रहे हैं, ट्राइबल्स के लिए, मार्जिनलाइज्ड कम्युनिटीज़ के लिए, क्या उनको पता है कि उनके पास ये अपॉर्चुनिटी है या नहीं? So the thing is, the sir was saying that we are looking from the economist perspective. We have to look from the philanthropist perspective. If we let me give you a simple example कि जहाँ से मैं आता हूँ हरियाणा से, वहाँ पे इशू ये है, the issue is कि जो पंचायती ज़मीन है और वो दलितों को मिली है, तो अगर वो उसके ऊपर खेती कर रहा है, बट क्या वो उस जो वो प्रोड्यूस कर रहा है क्या उसको बेच पा रहा है मंडी में जाके? द थिंग इज कि जो वहाँ पे सो को अपर कास्ट जमींदार है, दैट लैंड इज कंट्रोल्ड बाय हिम, कि वो जमीन उसको वो उस जमीन को कंट्रोल कर रहा है, और दैट बार्गेनिंग पावर दलितों के पास रही नहीं है. मतलब इफ यू लुक एट द हिस्टोरिकल पर्सपेक्टिव ऑफ इंडिया, तो बार्गेनिंग पावर दलितों के पास कभी रही नहीं है. सो ही इज नॉट एबल टू गो टू दैट मंडी टू दैट ही कैन बार्गेन देयर. So in emergency he have to sell that produce to that upper caste zamindar of that village.
Just like pressures.
So the thing is कि जब तक दलितों को या marginalized communities को उनके अपने rights के बारे में नहीं पता होगा, तो what will we do of the commons? कि उनको पता नहीं है कि commons में उसके क्या right है. क्या scheduled tribes को पता है कि tribals को पता है कि उनके पास rights क्या हैं scheduled tribes act के अंदर और या forest rights act के अंदर. So my main perspective is this that the main gap that we have to look is that from the perspective of कि भाई जो उनके पास जो उनके लिए कानून बनाए गए हैं, क्या उनको उसके बारे में पता है या नहीं है. So we have to work on this कि भाई हम लोग कन्वेंशन करवाएं, but the thing is कि यहाँ पे कितने ट्राइबल्स हैं, क्या हमारी बात जो हम यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं क्या वो ट्राइबल्स से पहुँच पा रही है? क्या उनको पता है कि उनके राइट्स क्या हैं? क्या वो दलितों तक उनकी बात पहुँच पा रही है? So that is my main thing कि अपॉर्चुनिटीज़ का ही नहीं पता होगा तो what will
मैं एक चीज़ जोड़ना चाहूँगा आपके सामने. राइट्स और इसके कानून के बारे में आजकल क्योंकि मीडिया और जो आजकल ये फ़ोन की एप्रोच काफ़ी नीचे तक पहुँच चुकी है, लोग सब देखते सुनते भी हैं, पर सिस्टम से लड़ना और उनको पाना दैट इज़ वेरी डिफ़िकल्ट. अगर मेरा भी राइट पता है ना, और मैं उस राइट को लेने के लिए कोर्ट से जाऊँगा. अभी जैसे आपको बताएं कि ये जो है ऑरेंज की जो ज़मीन है, जो कॉमन्स की लैंड है, वो कहीं रिकॉर्ड में चरागा है, कहीं राजस्व ज़मीन में है, कहीं किसी कैटेगरी में है. वो किसी भी जो है एज ऑरेंज जो है जैसलमेर में करीब हमने अभी सर्वे किया था 100 ऑरेंज का, तो करीब 30% ऑरेंज हैं जो रेवेन्यू रिकॉर्ड में एज गैर मुमकिन ऑरेंज दर्ज हैं. बाकी सब ज़मीन ऐसे ही है. जब वो ऑन रिकॉर्ड नहीं है तो आप उनको कैसे बचाएंगे? तो एक अभी एक PIL में डिसीजन हुआ था सुप्रीम कोर्ट का. सुप्रीम कोर्ट के डिसीजन के उस पर राजस्थान गवर्नमेंट ने फरवरी में एक जो है करीब 4 लाख हेक्टेयर ज़मीन का जो ऑरेंज थे 5000, उनका नोटिफिकेशन जारी किया कि उनको डीम्ड फॉरेस्ट घोषित किया जाए. तो वो उसकी हमारे अमन सिंह जो कृपा विश के फाउंडर मेंबर हैं, उन्होंने PIL लगाई थी. उसकी रेफरेंस में वो ऑर्डर आया जब गवर्नमेंट ने जब 1995 से ये जो है लड़ाई चल रही थी उसमें, अब जा कर के वो ऑर्डर आया. तो अब आप बताओ, पढ़े लिखे लोग, संस्था के लोग प्रयास कर रहे हैं, जब नहीं जीत पा रहे. एक आदमी मान लीजिए मैं दलित हूँ या सर्वण कास्ट हूँ, कोई भी हूँ, मैं अधिकार पा ही नहीं सकता क्योंकि मेरे पास इंडिविजुअल लेवल पे इतनी पावर है ही नहीं. तो हमें अधिकार डिसेंट्रलाइज नहीं होते. अभी FRA एक्ट के तहत दुनिया भर की एप्लीकेशन लोगों ने तैयार करवाई. उदयपुर के सेवा पर सभी क्षेत्र में कितने लोगों को मिले, बंडल बनते हैं वो एक कह देते हैं नहीं मिल सकते, न रिटर्न में कोई वो देते हैं वो कंसेंट, न रिजेक्ट करते, पेंडेंसी पड़ी रहती है, वही रेस्टोरेंट।
Okay, thank you. So we're coming close to the official lunch hour, and we've covered a lot of ground. But I want to see if there are any thoughts about what you're drawing out of this diverse conversation. You said you have a constructive suggestion. Does it relate to the diversity of topics we've touched on? Please.
Yes. I think, one reason why, say, for example, in my work, a lot of pastoralists are settling down is because they're not able to educate their children. And in Kashmir, in a sense, what has worked is that the government provides mobile schools for moving people, pastoralists. And I think, some way of, I don't know if we are thinking of knowledge commons as a kind of commons that is on the table for discussion. But I think some way of kind of, maybe not just for pastoralists, but all kinds of populations like migrant workers and others. Again, I'm taking the conversation away from this kind of village commons idea that this conference kind of seems to be rooted in. So a kind of way of creating mobile education, mobile mechanisms for knowledge commons. So, that's, I think, perhaps the biggest reason why a lot of people are moving away from careers and things that they are doing, which are steeped in their traditional knowledge, and then they are becoming, landless laborers in cities, just because their kids can go to some school which doesn't even teach them basic numeracy and skills. And I think that's a major crisis that, if we are talking about the commons, we need to address. Yeah, so knowledge commons. Yeah.
All right. We're just about at the point where we need to wrap this up. And Pratiti, I want to hear whether there are any reflections you have or closing thoughts before we draw this together.
Yeah, so I think there's been a very rich discussion and a very participatory discussion. And I feel there are a few major buckets that we see emerging. One of these beginning from the very fundamental question of what are these commons, whose commons are these, what is the status of these commons, what is the significance, and when we say significance, not just looking at the economic value, but as a friend from Seva Mandir was also saying, as how commons can be seen as a means for social change, or what are the cultural values associated with commons, which a lot of people here in the room have spoken about. Documenting these and then highlighting these, celebrating these, that's been one of the key themes that has emerged. Another that was coming out was commons and inclusion, wherein we talked a lot about women, both from the leadership perspective, but also how do rights to commons or access to commons, governance around commons, how does that influence even the intra-household decision-making processes. So that's another theme that seemed to be emerging. Maybe we could have, probably we did not talk much about youth and commons when we were talking about commons and inclusion, but that is something that was coming out in the screen as one of the other areas. The third major area I would see was around commons and livelihoods. So a lot of discussion around NTFPs, value chains, marketing research, even what Devaji was mentioning earlier, like he would like to know what is the extent of the commons or forests in his particular village, what is the status of that particular forest, what are the different kinds of species in his forest, what is the different kinds of NTFPs being generated. So those kind of questions were emerging quite a lot. Then on investments, there was some discussion that ma'am over there and you were also saying as to investments on commons and its impact. There needs to be more systematic research around that and use it in a way that it can be used to influence, improve policy or programmatic action around commons. So that seemed to be another critical area. And across the room, as an approach, what was really highlighted was how research and learning needs to be community embedded, it needs to be community led. When we're talking about collaborative research, it's not just researchers and practitioners or researchers from different disciplines, but also bringing in community members, policymakers probably, or other stakeholders as he was mentioning about. So, yeah, I think.
Great. Let me just mention before we close altogether, thank you very much, Pratiti, because that draws together quite a few of the themes that we were hearing about. The intent of this session also has been to spark some possibilities of connection, right? And so we really encourage you, if you've heard something that's of particular interest, that you go ahead and approach your current or potential future colleague, just to make that and see if you can keep in touch about it. This is still open if there are other thoughts you want to add before you leave about points of collaboration. Sorry. That you can still add these into your thoughts as well, and that way they'll be recorded, so there's a way to keep track of it. But in addition, I know technology is not working for everyone. If Dipashri, you could raise your hand, Karen here, Apurva, and Pratiti herself. If there's some point of collaboration that you just want to get down and communicate, because we haven't had a chance to hear from everyone, please tell one of these four so that we can help make those connections following up as well. Okay? So we'll use a variety of avenues, the high-tech and the ancient. Thank you so much for taking the time in a very open and broad conversation.
Very good moderation.
Oh, this one was challenging.
Why do you look so familiar? I'm sorry, have you met? What's your name?
Blake.
It was really good speaking with everyone.
I think 2 years before online.
Online, I think that's
he
right.
made some
Yes.